Welcome to the Way of the Taibhsear podcast. This is episode 23, Vision Seeking. This week's Celtic goddess is Beg. Beg is a goddess protector of the wells. Her name means small, and it's believed that her powers were so minute that she was not able to protect large bodies of water like oceans, rivers, and lakes, and so was only able to watch over wells. She's one of the Tua de Danann, or the fairy people known as the Children of Danu. Beg's sacred plant is the heather, and the dragonfly is her ally. This makes her a shamanic goddess, able to pass between the worlds. Wells are often seen as a portal to the other world, and therefore Beg is often invoked prior to any shamanic journey or vision-seeking inner work. Invoke Beg in matters of rainmaking and water magic. When Beg enters your life, pay close attention to the small details. She may be telling you that you need to look more deeply within, and the small changes within yourself could lead to bigger changes in the world around you. I believe that the existence of the classical path can be pregnantly formulated as follows. The path comes into existence only when we observe it. Werner Heisenberg, 1927. Certain aspects of quantum theory would seem to indicate that the observer influences reality simply by the act of observing it. This is explained in Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Heisenberg was a physicist studying subatomic phenomenon. He discovered that it is possible to either measure a particle's position or its momentum, but not both. The mere act of observing a subatomic particle changes either the position or the momentum, depending on how you observe it. In other words, the act of observing reality changes the physical structure of reality. An in-depth discussion of this principle is beyond the scope of our podcast. Let's just say that in general terms, the choices you make create reality for you. Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger speculated in 1935 that the act of observing a subatomic reaction creates two paths of probability. He illustrated this in a famous experiment concerning a cat. The Schrödinger's cat experiment is a thought experiment illustrating the seeming absurdities of quantum physics. In the experiment, a cat is placed in a sealed box with a vial of poisonous gas. The release of the gas is controlled by the decay of a radioactive material. In Schrödinger's thought experiment, the release of a single atom of radioactive material is enough to break the vial and release the deadly poison. Since Heisenberg's uncertainty principle states that we cannot know for sure both the position and the momentum of a single particle, it is impossible to know for sure whether the cat is alive or dead without opening the box. According to quantum theory, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. This state of being both alive and dead is called a state of superposition. And this somewhat confusing paradox can only be resolved by assuming the existence of two separate universes, one in which the cat is dead, and one in which the cat is alive. This rather elaborate thought experiment simply means that it's quite possible that there's more than one universe. It works this way, according to some theoreticians. You have a choice. In making a decision on how to act on that choice, you create two alternate realities, one in which you made the decision, and the other in which you didn't. The question is, did that alternate reality in which you made the choice suddenly spring into existence, or has it always existed? I propose that all alternate realities have always existed. Every possible permutation of every person's choice has always existed in a multiverse of sorts. In this multiverse, everything that is possible has happened in one universe or another. Each choice you make traces a line of probability. When you choose between two paths, one path branches off into two forks. Each choice you make creates yet another fork. The multiverse contains all possible universes. The paths from universe to universe connect to each other like an infinite silver lattice. There's a universe in which you're a male, a universe in which you are female. There's a universe in which you may be of some other gender or no gender at all. There's a universe in which you choose to go to college and one in which you do not. There's a universe in which you are a vegetarian and another where you're a carnivore. There's an infinite number of alternate yous, all living, learning, and growing, and making alternate choices that send them off into yet another universe in the multiverse. Suppose that this latticework of permutations known as the multiverse exists independent of time. As we travel along this latticework of the multiverse, time is nothing more than our way of making things appear coherently and in order. It's our way of understanding our experiences. As one wit said, time is nature's way of keeping everything from happening at once. Picture it this way. If you're like me, you have a shelf full of DVDs. Each one of those DVDs contains a movie. The entire movie exists all at once, self-contained in that bit of plastic on your shelf. But in order to experience that movie, you have to take it off of the shelf and view it from start to finish, through time. What if the nature of true reality, or of the multiverse, is that the multiverse is just an infinite collection of DVDs, where every choice you make puts you into a new movie? If that is the case, then time is an illusion. It's just our way of making sense of what we've chosen to experience. As we live our lives, we trace a path on the latticework of the multiverse. The path has always existed. We're just connecting the dots as we make certain choices and work our way through the latticework. From this viewpoint, both free will and determinism are true. All the possible decisions we could ever make in life already exist. They're predetermined. But as we live our lives, we are free to choose among those predetermined possibilities. So although all the possibilities already exist, we exercise our free will in choosing which possibilities to experience. Other versions of ourselves may choose other possibilities. Either way, the path we choose for our lives is ultimately our own, and the result of our own choices. Now let's take that a step further. If time is just an illusion, then it would be theoretically possible to live more than one life at a time. You can watch more than one movie. If you've seen one movie, there's no reason why you can't choose to watch another, or even watch two at the same time, if you have a good attention span. Anyone who has ever lived with a channel surfer can relate to this idea. You could even identify with different characters in the same movie at different times, depending on what you're feeling when you watch that movie. Or you could rewind or fast forward to your favorite parts. What I'm proposing here is a sort of reincarnation on steroids. Let's assume for a moment that reincarnation is possible. If that is so, then reincarnation wouldn't be time-dependent, since time is an illusion. So you could live one life in 21st century America Then turn right around and live your next life in Egypt 2,000 to 4,000 years ago, simply by choosing a different starting point on the lattice of the multiverse. You could bounce back and forth from future to past to present, not having to live your various lives chronologically, since time only exists when you reincarnate. It doesn't exist in between incarnations, in the place we call the Summerlands, or Avalon, or Tirnanog, or the land of the young. A place without time would quite literally be the land of the young, as it would be impossible to age in such a place. What would be the purpose of living multiple lives? The answer is simple: to know new things. As we continue to travel along the lattice work of the multiverse, we gain new knowledge from life to life, storing it up through wisdom and experience. At first, memories of past lives are buried in the unconscious mind and not readily available, except as instinct and intuition. But as experience is gained, old knowledge becomes more readily available, first through our subconscious intuitions, and then more and more by direct memories of those experiences. As we learn to integrate aspects of our past selves, we become more adept at remembering. As we recall knowledge gained in past lives, we continue to learn and grow in this life. How many people are experiencing new lives through reincarnation? Well, how would you pick a number? Let's suppose for a moment that you could go to the extreme. How many souls would it take to sustain such a system, assuming that time is an illusion, and people could interact with themselves in different incarnations at the same time? Remember that time is irrelevant. All time does is indicate your path through the lattice. So you could be traveling many different paths at once. How many souls would there be then? Would it be possible to sustain such a multiverse with only one soul? What if there was only one soul in the entire universe? That would mean that I am you and you are me. That jerk who cut you off in traffic last week was actually you in another incarnation. That waitress who drove you nuts at the lunch counter yesterday was actually you too. That cute girl or that handsome guy who smiled at you was also just another aspect of you. How would it change your perceptions if you looked upon everyone you meet as just another aspect of yourself? What if every person around you was just you and another aspect? Now imagine that this one soul traveling through the multiverse has experienced life in other forms as well, as animals, as plants, as every living thing. How would that change your perception of the nature that surrounds you if you knew that what you are doing to nature, you are ultimately doing to yourself? The bard Taibhsear reflects on this idea in an excerpt from his poem, I Am Taibhsear. I have been a blue salmon. I have been a dog, a stag, a roebuck on the mountain, a stock, a spade, an axe in the hand, a stallion, a bull, a buck. I was reaped and placed in an oven. I fell to the ground when I was being roasted, and the hen swallowed me. For 9 nights I was in her crop. I have been dead. I have been alive. I am Taibhsear. Take the idea of the reincarnation of the one soul even further. What if there's life on other planets? Could you have experienced life a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away? How would that change your perceptions of the nature of life in this universe? How would it change your perception of the nature of your dreams? If it's possible that you lived in another universe, where all things are possible, could your dreams reflect another reality? As the one soul continues to reincarnate, to learn and to grow, its knowledge would increase exponentially. Eventually, such a goal would approach godlike knowledge. Could it be possible that the gods and the goddesses are merely aspects of ourselves that have advanced to the point of possessing divine knowledge? As these divine beings continue to grow and learn, they approach omnipotence. If there is such a thing as a god, then one of the characteristics of God is being an all-knowing or omniscient being. If experience is the best teacher, then the best way to learn something is to experience it firsthand, to make the mistakes, to take the risks, to participate, to learn from doing. Returning to this lattice of the multiverse for a moment, it is by definition the self-contained representation of every experience it would be possible to have as a living entity. In other words, it contains all possible knowledge. In Sanskrit, this multiverse containing all possible knowledge is known as the Akashic Records. The best way to become omniscient, then, would be to experience everything there is to know. And the best way to do that would be to trace all the paths in the Akashic Records of the multiverse until every possible permutation had become part of your experience. The further along you are on this journey, the more divine and godlike you become. When you have finished this task, you will be all-knowing. You will be God. So in a way, we're all connected. In a way, we are all God. We are all one soul in the process of discovering our godhood. When the journey is over, we will become God. From the center, we are already God. We are the one soul, ever learning and ever growing.
Oh, my love is gone. My love has left me. Raven circle where he lies upon the plain. Wolves triumphant howl with the Valkyries. Search for heroes for Valhalla's endless feast. The hills and vales, they hold no joy for me now. Only memories too painful to endure. Oh, my love, if the swan shape I could only take, then I would search for you and find you once again. Brave upon the field, shoulder to shoulder, with your chieftain bold you held the banner high. Arrows thick and fierce obscure the sunlight, pierced your gallant breast, now with your lord you lie. The hills and vales, they hold no joy for me now. Only memories too painful to endure. Oh, my love, if this one shape I could only take, then I would search for you and find you once again. Now I haunt the hills, my heart is broken. see your smiling face in every hill and glen. I search the clouds and sky, I strain to hear your voice, blowing from Valhalla, whose sacred halls you guard. The hills and vales, they hold no joy for me now, only memories too painful to endure. Oh, my love, if the swan shape I could only take, then I would search for you and find you once again.
Have you ever looked at the clouds and seen faces or other images in them? Most children and many adults have played this game from time to time. But have you ever stopped to think about why you saw a certain image and not another? There's no real image there in the clouds, so any image you see is a projection of your own mind onto the pattern in the sky. The next time you see an image in the clouds, ask yourself what that image means to you, and what might be going on in your own life that would cause you to see that particular image. The Celts spoke of the green man. The green man was the physical embodiment of nature in divine form. He's often depicted as a face made of leaves and twigs. Celts saw faces in the trees in much the same way that we now see faces in the clouds. One Celtic legend has it that when an ancestor dies, his or her soul inhabits a tree. According to this legend, each tree has its own properties and personality. If a Celt saw the face of an ancestor in a tree, they noticed the type of tree and its qualities. It's believed that the ancestor whose face they saw in the tree was sending a message through the type of tree that they chose to manifest in. Of course, there's no real face in the tree. What was at work here was the observer's own unconscious mind, meeting his or her need to hear from an ancestor from beyond the grave. When you spend time in nature, notice which things attract your attention. Think about what those things mean to you, and ask yourself why this particular thing should capture your attention at this particular time. As you notice what captures your attention, are you given any choices? Is something in the woods calling you to make a decision? If you make a choice, what new universe will you enter by choosing? What universe might you leave behind? Sometime this week, weather permitting, go for a walk in the woods if possible. Do you see any faces in the trees? What do these faces seem to be doing? Do they remind you of anyone? If there's a face in the trees, and if such a face has a message for you, what might it be? If you heed the message, how might your life be different? If you don't heed the message, what might remain unchanged in your life?
Waiting at the junction of the old straight track, holding me back. Too much road rage in the Aquarian age. Dazzle in the mirror and nothing on the radio. Forget what the lights say, I'll find another way. Cross through the circle, climb over the barrow. The tarmac's old and the pavements are narrow. Walk with the green man, take the contraflow. You don't need traffic signs to follow the ley lines. You take the high road and I'll take the one that runs underground. My cat's eyes are bonfires linking the hills of the old straight track. Waiting at the junction for the lights to change, I saw the sign. I'm not waiting for the green man, I'm not wasting my time. Go past the long man and over the hill, leading you places the road never will. Walk with the green man, take the contraflow. You don't have to wait for him to say when you can go. For him to say when you can go.
In Welsh lore, the goddess Arianrhod lives in the spiral castle known as Caer Arianrhod. She is the goddess of life, death, and rebirth. She sits at her spinning wheel, spinning the silver threads of life. Each thread is a pathway through the lattice of the multiverse waiting to be woven. She weaves these threads into the web that is all life. Because she spins this magical web, she is sometimes equated with the Spider-Woman of Native American myths, or with the Nornir of the Norse gods. Many Native American legends regarding the Spider-Woman have her creating the world with the power of her thoughts, and likewise with the triple goddesses, the Nornir. Consider the threads that Arianrhod spins. Each thread is a life. This life thread will be woven in and out of the lattices of the multiverse as the individual makes choices in life. As this thread progresses through life, it interweaves with other threads from other lives, creating a web of infinite possibility. These life threads are actually the energy of consciousness, adding to itself and growing as experience is gained. Consider that each of these threads is a thread of probability, and that Arianrhod sits at the center of the web of life, spinning these threads. Anywhere a thread touches another thread, it is a fork where a life decision can be made that will take the consciousness of that individual in a different direction. All these changing directions and infinite probabilities are the sum total of all conscious experience. We'll come back to Arianrhod and the web of life shortly, but now let's talk about the Wheel of Tyrannus. The Wheel of Tyrannus is a circle containing a cross. The bars of the cross represent the solstices and the equinoxes. Therefore, the wheel is a representation of the cycle of the year. This means that the Wheel of Tyrannus embodies the idea of time. Specifically, time is a repeating cycle. That's the superficial meaning of the wheel, but there's also a deeper meaning. Imagine all the possible universes that exist within the multiverse. All of these universes make up the rim of the wheel of Tyrannus. While at the center of the wheel, a conscious entity is looking at all the places on the rim. Such an individual has access to all the universes of the multiverse. At the center, there is no time, there is no space, there is no past and no future. There's only present awareness. But as a person's consciousness travels along a spoke to a particular universe, their consciousness becomes aware of time and becomes embedded in it. While at the center, all times and all places are available, but once you've traveled down the spoke of the wheel, you become enmeshed in a particular universe associated with that spoke. Once in a particular universe, you cannot see any possibilities except those with which that particular universe is involved. In order to see beyond the possibilities of that universe, you must return to the center and start over, choosing another spoke. This means that to begin any shamanic journey or vision quest, you must first return to the center from which all universes may be accessed. Once there, you're in the middle of the web of life. All worlds are available to you. All times are available to you. All fates are available to you, as are all knowledge and wisdom.
Of glass, a silver wheel turns in the night, slender hands guide a thread, keeping it true, keeping it tight as it spins. Fate it begins to open its eyes, lady of the moon, of the in the spiral castle, I hear you sing, lady of the silver wheel, lady of the silver wheel. Ariane, what lady of changes, you spin the web of life, the web of life. Gather up every thread, weave them together, join them as one, the spindle begins to turn. A soul's new journey has begun on the earth with every birth. So the web that joins together all life is as one, daughter and son, animal, human, old and young, lady of the silver wheel, lady of the silver wheel. Ariane, what lady of changes, you spin the web of life, lady of the silver wheel, lady of the silver wheel. Ariane, what lady of changes, you spin the web of life, the web of life. Autumn begins to fall, and the moon wanes and seasons grow cold. others grow old, oh, she sings, the last chorus begins, with a voice as gentle as winter's lace, a new thread through the wheel it is fed. Woe to those who see her face, Lady of the silver wheel, Lady of the silver wheel. Ariane, what lady of changes, you spin the web of life. Lady of the silver wheel, Lady of the silver wheel. Ariane, what lady of changes, you spin the web of life, the web of life, web of life.
Newgrange is a prehistoric burial monument located in eastern Ireland. This monument dates back to at least 3200 BC and consists of an inner chamber that is flooded with light only on the rising sun of the winter solstice and for the 4 days thereafter. The Newgrange site is a mound built of alternating layers of earth and stone, about 250 feet across and circular in shape. It's about 40 feet high and covers approximately an acre. Inside the mound is a large central chamber surrounded by 3 smaller chambers. This may only be accessed by a single opening in the southeastern side of the structure. The chamber walls are decorated with various spirals and other artwork, but the most notable feature is the triskel, or the triple spiral, which is arranged in the chamber so as to only be illuminated once per year by the sun at the winter solstice. Also included in the construction of Newgrange were several monoliths similar to those found at Stonehenge, but predating that monument by almost 1,000 years. The amount of effort required to move these huge stones would seem to hint at some sort of religious or spiritual purpose for its construction. There's quite a bit of speculation as to the purpose of Newgrange. The remains of 5 human bodies, some cremated, indicate that this may have been a ceremonial tomb of some sort. The fact that there are only 5 bodies in this gigantic complex probably means that it was not used primarily as any sort of sacred burial site. Therefore, the 5 bodies found inside must have some other reason for being there. Throughout the world, at various times and in various cultures, there have been shamanic traditions. One of the tasks of the shaman is to commune with the dead. Another is to journey to the other world and to bring back knowledge. Most, if not all, shamanic traditions have some sort of initiation rite in which the dedicant dies to his former self and is reborn to the life of the shaman. All of these elements are present at Newgrange. The remains of the 5 bodies placed within the chambers at Newgrange suggest that they were arranged in places of honor, if not of worship. The fact that there were only 5 may mean that there was something very special about these 5 bodies. Perhaps they were shamanistic teachers or ancestors of a high magical and spiritual importance. It is possible that the corpses were placed within the mound so that petitioners could seek wisdom from them. The theme of death and rebirth is also present in the construction of Newgrange. The central chamber, buried and surrounded by 40 feet of earth, is only accessible through one narrow passage. This is clearly an archetypal womb of the Earth Mother. The theme of rebirth is reinforced by the fact that the chamber floor is only illuminated during the winter solstice, which is the date of the rebirth of the sun. Could Newgrange have been used for initiatory rites into a shamanistic priesthood? The following reconstruction of such a shamanistic initiation is pure speculation, but I've drawn from traditions from around the world in its making. Although it's purely a creation of my own fancy, it somehow feels right. Here it is. A feast and a celebration are given at the temple complex surrounding the Newgrange Mound. This is done in preparation for the winter solstice, when the new members of the shamanistic priesthood will be inducted into the service of the goddess. The candidates do not eat at the feast, nor will they eat for the entire period of their initiation, although it is possible that they may ingest plants or herbs to enhance visions. This practice of fasting and ingesting of psychotropic plants is common among many shamanistic traditions. Amid dancing and drumming, the candidates are admitted to the central chamber of the mound. There are no torches or other light sources. No smoke or carbon residue has been found on the ceiling of the monument, so it is reasonable to assume that there were no torches there. The candidates await the journey in total darkness. The journey into the darkness of the mound symbolizes death and burial. This is consistent with the technique of sensory deprivation used by many cultures throughout the world. When used in this manner, the senses are deprived of stimulation in order to achieve a state receptive to visions and dreams. Lacking any outside stimuli, the mind turns inward. When turned inward in this manner, freed of distractions, the mind makes contact with all the collective unconscious shared by all of us. We know that later bards use this method to compose verse, so the idea is not without precedent. There's no way to know exactly how long the candidates may have stayed within the chamber, but many shamanic practices use a period of 3 days and 3 nights for such initiation. This would be consistent with the theme of the sacredness of the number 3 that repeats itself throughout the artwork found in Newgrange. So the petitioner finds himself or herself in the center of a burial mound, in total darkness, surrounded by the remains of 5 sacred bodies there to guide them to the other world. The dedicant spends 3 days and 3 nights communing with the spirits of the sacred ancestors present there, in the womb of the earth. On the 3rd day, at dawn, the light of the newborn sun illuminates the floor of the central chamber, marking the first time in 3 days that this person has seen any light whatsoever. This also marks the first time she has seen the sun with her new shamanic eyes. She leaves the chamber, crawling through the narrow passage like an infant struggling to be born, so that he or she may share the sacred wisdom of the vision with the rest of the tribe. Although this is just a reconstruction, it can be a useful roadmap for anyone seeking to journey into the spirit world. Many contemporary pagans interested in vision-seeking have used similar techniques, devoid of corpses, of course, with great success. The idea of death in one form and rebirth in another is inherent in most shamanic traditions. This rebirth requires some sort of ritualistic initiation ceremony, usually after a period of fasting or some other preparation. Celtic shamanic traditions also involve sensory deprivation, usually sitting in isolation in a dark room for a specified period of time. You may choose to create your own initiatory rite to celebrate the beginning of your travels on the path of a Taibhsear. If possible, it's preferable to do so under the tutelage of someone intimately familiar with the practices of journeying to the other world.
silent. Chocolate brown, dreaming of Guinea. Grandma teaches me from the side of death. Teaches me to understand. Understand the dreams, she said. Everything is silent, silent like the grave, silent like the night.
In the Way of the Taibhsear, we use the Celtic tree alphabet known as the Ogham. In this section of the podcast, we will present one character of the Ogham each week, offering information on the meaning of each letter of the Ogham alphabet, trees associated with each letter, the healing and magical properties of each tree, gods and goddesses associated with each tree and letter, and the divinatory meanings of each letter of the Ogham. Since we will be discussing medicinal uses of the plants in this segment of the podcast, please remember that herbal medicine requires caution and practice. None of the medicinal uses discussed on the Way of the Taibhsear podcast should be attempted by a novice. Some parts of the plants of the Ogham are poisonous, and people with allergies should also be aware of the potential allergic reactions to plants. If you are interested in herbal medicine, find a skilled practitioner and take lessons. Do not attempt to use medicinal plants without the supervision of an expert. The letter E of the Ogham alphabet is represented by Ea. Its divinatory meaning is endurance, perseverance, and persistence. Some orders use a species of poplar for this letter. In the order of the Taibhsear, we use the aspen. Healing properties of the aspen. The sap of the aspen is a diuretic in small doses. In large doses, it induces vomiting and may cause nausea. The bark may be used to treat headaches and fever. The bark also contains an analgesic, and tea made from this bark has anti-inflammatory properties. In ancient times, the leaves of the aspen were used to heal palsy. A tea made from the leaves may be used to ease menstrual cramps. The tea also helps to relieve symptoms of diarrhea and can help to clear up urinary tract infections. Chop or grind the root and make it into a poultice to help heal cuts and bruises. Magical uses. Aspen magic is used for invoking power and insight. It can be used to create a change in a situation. The aspen is sacred to the Druids and represents the hope of rebirth and new beginnings. Plant an aspen near your home to protect it from burglars. It may also be planted in gardens and fields to prevent the theft of livestock and vegetables. If you wish the gift of eloquence, place an aspen leaf under your tongue. Make incense of aspen bark and burn it at Samhain to protect your home from evil spirits. You may also release fears by writing them on a dried aspen leaf and burning the leaf. If you're troubled with palsy, pin a lock of your hair to an aspen tree at midnight for 3 successive nights when the moon begins to wane. As you pin your hair to the tree, repeat the following 3 times. Aspen tree, I prithee shake instead of me. The wood of the aspen may be used to create magical flutes to be used in rituals. The music of such flutes brings about change and transformation, so only use such a flute if you want something different to happen. Aspen magic is a magic of protection. As such, Celtic battle shields were often made of aspen in order to protect the bearer. If you're in need of protective magic, consider including aspen in some way. Gods associated with this tree is the god Cernunnos and the goddess Drancha. You've been listening to the Way of the Taibhsear podcast on International Pagan Radio, where it's all pagan, all the time. This has been episode 23, Vision Seeking. Music on this episode featured Valhalla's Feast by Albanach, The Green Man by Magic Folk, Lady of the Silver Wheel by Dave the Bard, and The Ancestors by Sun God. The Way of the Taibhsear is the official podcast of the Order of the Taibhsear. You can learn more about us at Taibhsear.com. That's TAIBHSEAR.com. The Way of the Taibhsear is a podcast about Druidry and paganism as practiced by the Order of the Taibhsear. Paganism is a wide and diverse community, and we don't claim to speak for all pagans. You can get in touch with us at the show at podcast@Taibhsear.com. That's podcast@TAIBHSEAR.com. The Way of the Taibhsear is sponsored by Elder Grove Seminary, offering the best in pagan education, with online bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees, and ministry and divinity. Learn more about Elder Grove Seminary at eldergrove.org. Until next time, blessings of the ancestors.